food pest, Drosophila suzuki, otherwise known as Spotted Wing Drosophila, SWD, is really destroying the integrated pest management programs, IPM. They were developed in the 1940s and 50s, whether organic or conventional. And the SWD invasion has really forced a lot of these fruit growers to drastically increase chemical applications. IPM really pulls together a number of these practices. It doesn't rule out pesticides. However, there's this heightened awareness of the downfalls and concerns of using only pesticides as a control method. So my focus today will highlight on prevention, cultural and biological agents, season by season. And we don't pretend to know it all. It's only been 6 years, but it's the best of our knowledge today, and the best that I know of today, and we must be very innovative. Hey, let's begin with a little snapshot, the life of the fly. And as I have said before, and in many talks, understanding Suzuki's habits and behavior will improve the chances for controlling the pest. And this takes time. Our desire is to minimize the impact. So let's get to know the fly. There's 4 stages of growth. We'll start with the adult. And the growth is really dependent on environmental conditions, like temperature and moisture. Is a host available? And the adults appear at this point in the Pacific Northwest to be the only life stage that overwinters. They can live up to 5 months, but do they? It's actually typically they only live a month or more during the summer, and many of them don't make it through the winter. When they wake up in the spring, they start laying eggs, several hundred eggs at a time, and they're really opportunistic. So if a host is available, they'll lay, they're very mobile, and they'll go to find hosts. The eggs hatch, and the larvae are really the life stage that feeds inside the fruit, causing the damage. The larvae then pupate. You could see these cool whirlwind of respiratory horns. Some pupate inside the fruit, others drop outside of the fruit, and I'll explain that later. But you know, there's many Drosophila out there, and it's very difficult to really distinguish between the Drosophila unless you really take a closer look. There's also quite a number of species that you'll find in some of your traps. Some have different interests and feeding habits. Some are urban, some are wild. Good identification skills are a must. I've listed 3 websites that are very important websites to really help you in identifying SWD. And there's various parameters that we look at when we're trying to distinguish SWD from other Drosophila. So please take a look at those websites. You could see that spot on the males, unlike the females that have no spots. But it's much more difficult to see that ovipositor, a very serrated saw that she uses to get inside a fruit. So a female ovipositor or egg-laying device really can't be done without a scope. So monitoring requires a good trap and a bait, and it's really a key provision of an IPM program. We must really depend and strive for that the SWD don't escape from your trap, that they're sensitive to early catch, particularly in areas that are very cold, like Michigan, Colorado, and very specific to SWD females. Are these females? No, they're males. So they have not to be mistaken for the females. And also, there's a lot of reasons to really get a grip on why do you monitor. It's not an easy task, but you can actually look at why activity and when activity starts in a crop. You can recognize the threat by the numbers you're getting, historical numbers you're getting in a trap, and you can actually use monitoring to measure a treatment performance or identify hot spots in your environment and follow the shifts in seasonal abundance. So I have included here quite a few trap designs. And really there's some visual cues such as color, pattern, and size that are used in some of these trap designs. For example, the color red is really slightly better than yellow, and the stripes are better than just a plain trap. There are several that use side entries versus a bottom entry where the fly comes in and comes in the liquids into this trough, as well as a trap that had a little bit of volume, and it helps avoid an evaporation of the liquid bait. So some are very much homemade, like the PBJ, peanut butter container that Betsy Beers designed in Washington. Others you could see incorporated these nets. And also there's baits and lures, liquid baits and lures, possibly, that you put into these traps. In SWD, if you start to get to know them, they have a short range attraction to these baits. They respond to yeast associated cues and the visual cues that actually help guide the orientation to a host. You want these baits to last in a field. And in many cases, you have to service some of these baits that are underlined every week. But there's some commercial baits, Suzuki Trap, Tracy Lures, Sentry pouches that are only a few that actually can last 4 to 6 weeks in a field. And when in fact Suzuki Trap bait, you can just replenish every time you go out there after counting. All baits here are better than the standard apple cider vinegar, which has a 5% acetic acid, as well as they detect flies earlier in the season than apple cider vinegar. So we have found that these other mixtures of wheat, sugar, yeast, wine, apple cider vinegar are very good choices for monitoring. There's a company called Alpha Scent sticky cards, and they attached a lure inside of the sticky card, and these cards really caught high numbers and decent selectivity for those females late in season. But if you want to make counts, it's very difficult to identify the females on the card, and you can see here it's male dominated, but it's a pretty decent trap. So I've selected just 4, not saying these are the best, but I found they're good examples of success. And there's one too that was just taking a 2-liter bottle, inverting the lid, and making something like this McPhail type trap called a Trap It. You could see the lures hanging inside here. You can fill these with bait, and there's a bottle trap out of Spain. I thought, well, I'll show you about 4 examples of some data. The fermenting lure, which is, again, you can see this is high counts. This is SWD per week. A group of folks across many states, Barack led this group. And you could see there was really no difference between a fermenting bait, homemade fermenting bait versus Tracy, and they supplemented it with ACV that gave it a boost. And we did a trial in Oregon in blueberries on the perimeter using this little pouch hanging in here with just a drowning solution of water. There's Tracy Lure in 2014. And throughout the season, you could see these high bars. This is just male and females. You will see that when upon comparison that the Sentry by far caught more SWD, but less selectivity for SWD females, but much higher numbers, Sentry pouch. And there was some work, it's only a 2-week trial. Grey Globe in 2015, New York, you can see that there's some work done since 2014 that they boosted the Tracy Lure, again, 2-week trial in raspberries. They got high numbers of SWD compared to the standard. But when compared again with the Sentry, we got, I think it was in British Columbia, they got higher numbers. But again, selectivity was not as good. Work that was done in Canada, you could see yeast and sugar water, a great bait for attracting SWD. The Tracy Lure was high with apple cider vinegar addition as a drowning solution, and that Suzuki trap bait. We found the same in our cherry plot in 2014. Suzuki trap bait was very good. So in combination of trapping, we can predict SWD events, and there's an IPPC, Integrated Plant Protection Center on campus at Oregon State, and we use this model at this website to predict, alert, or it becomes this warning system of when they lay eggs in the spring. And by selecting a weather station, it's very easy to use. This model will give an output of dates, and it will show you when is the overwintering, when those flies that have been wintering wake up in the first generation, when are they laying eggs? A very important prediction. And I just wanted to show you this model uses temperature to track the development and make predictions. We would like to use this model mainly for this early season activity. You could see at each stage they take a certain amount of temperature develop, like only 1 to 3 days, and a total which will be different depending on temperature from 8 to 25 days, depending on if your mean is very warm of 77 versus colder, it would take longer for development. So not only trapping, predicting that activity, but you must be able to recognize damage in the field. Please refer to this publication to know when is SWD becoming a problem, and also be in tune when your fruit is ripening and susceptible to SWD oviposition or egg laying. Here's the PDF you can find online. Know when you have a problem. I'm giving you a little bit of a snapshot. Who is in the field or your backyard picking and monitoring? Train them adequately. See those little buggers? We produce 2 extension bulletins, not only using salt and brown sugar solution, but the importance of crushing. Please refer to these publications that will give you the details of how to monitor for SWD larvae in fruit. Now here's a big bummer. There's really no keys for distinguishing between Drosophila larvae. You see the mouth, very dark mouth parts. Take a closer look when you see those larvae, if you can stand it. And you can see there's 2 little nubbins here. They're breathing spiracles. This is how they breathe. If you press right in here, you'll see these really feathery objects come out, but they're also breathing spiracles. Unfortunately, too, there's folks out there that are developing a molecular diagnostic tool for actually identifying Drosophila Suzuki using a PCR method. Do your best to not mistake SWD for thrips, aphids, other Drosophila larvae, hoverfly larvae, sap beetles, or fruit worms. Develop a search image for this guy right here.
If you enjoyed this webinar and support this kind of work, check out our website and consider supporting us for future such efforts.